Welcome again to another exciting adventure of exciting Episcopalians. I'm William Charles Green, and joining me is an exciting Episcopalian. What a coincidence. William, what's your middle name?
Townsend.
Townsend Spear. Who is the Townsend family?
It's my mother's family.
Yeah. She a Maina?
Nope.
No.
Massachusetts.
But your dad was?
Yeah, yes, although he always sort of covered up the fact that he was actually born in Boston.
Yeah, my father was one of those too, Athol. Although his family was from Maine, they happened to be out there. But you're from the coast.
Yeah, I was born in Bath, brought up in Phippsburg.
Phippsburg. So where do you go to high school if you're brought up in Phippsburg?
Morse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And what'd you do after high school?
I started out, went to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy down at Kings Point, New York, which is where my father and one of my older brothers graduated from.
Yeah.
I was there on campus for a year. I did a term at sea and decided that going to sea was probably not the life for me.
Yeah.
And transferred to USM.
Nice. What'd you major in?
Major in political science, minor in biology.
Interesting. Good student?
More or less.
You got a degree, right?
I got the degree.
Yeah. What were you like as a kid? What'd you do for fun when you were a boy? I played baseball and went outside in the neighborhood and played with 100 other kids.
Well, we didn't have 100 other kids in Winnegans, Maine.
Yeah.
There were about 5 of us who were an age cohort, and that was it. And 2 of them went away to camp for most of the summer, so they were down to 3. So it was a fairly solitude, a lot of solitude.
All right.
But I had the river out back,
Yeah.
and
Didn't drown.
didn't drown.
Good for you.
Yeah, well, I learned to swim and row at a pretty young age.
Yeah. And you are linearly descended from Ellis Spear.
Not linearly.
Sideways.
Sideways,
That's what I
yeah.
meant.
He's
Yeah, that's what I meant.
second cousin 4 times removed.
A second cousin 4 times removed. I'll go back and figure that out. And he was, of course, Joshua Chamberlain's right-hand man at Gettysburg, who had a very different experience, wrote some books. If you're into the Civil War and you're into Mainers in the Civil War, you'll find out more about Ellis Spear. So what year are you getting out of USM?
I graduated December of 83.
83. So did you find a job?
Actually went back to school following year. Started working on getting teaching certification. Ran out of money and then got a job.
There you go. There you go.
I worked for 7 years in retail management with the Timberland Company.
Yeah.
And then circumstances sent me to be useless in Eustis for 4 years.
No kidding. What'd you do up there?
I was working for a company called Loresh Publishing, which was otherwise known as Strunk Games.
No.
Yeah.
Rory.
No.
Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew of one of those games that they had.
Yeah.
They were kind of
stacked dice game.
Made out of, yes.
Yeah. So I was involved with all aspects of that operation, from purchasing through manufacturing, distribution, and collections.
And what happened to the stacked dice game?
Loresh Publishing went out of business in 98, I think.
Yeah.
98, 99. And he sold it off. He licensed it out. And at some point, whoever had the license ceased manufacturing.
Yeah, but I remember they sold that license. That's
Yeah.
interesting. So you have a wife named Karen.
Yeah.
And where did you meet her? She's from England, you know.
Yeah.
So were you there? Was she here? Or were you halfway across the Atlantic when you met?
When I was working for Timberland, I figured out fairly quickly that if I actually wanted a vacation, I had to go far, far away and be unreachable. So I got in the habit, and did this for 4 years, of getting a youth hostel pass and a British rail card, and go to England and go off grid. And I met her at a youth hostel in a little place called Ludlow in the west of England.
No kidding. And so you were in, I don't know what it's called, an English-ophile.
Anglophile, yes.
A what?
Anglophile.
Anglophile, that makes sense. Before you met Karen.
Yes.
Do you know why? Is that your ancestry as well, or?
It's partly ancestry. Also, when I was at USM back at the beginning of the 80s, I did a term at university in England.
Oh, no kidding. Which one?
Went to a little place called Whitelands College.
Whitelands.
That's
It
in
sounds
South.
very English.
It's a small. It had in fact been a C of E. In fact, it still was a C of E school in southwest London, out near Wimbledon.
No kidding. So you really know England
More
pretty
or less.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. To the point where the family uses a lot of English colloquialisms, to the point where my daughter was really surprised when she used the word petrol with a friend who was puzzled until she understood that she meant gas.
All right. Now, what year did you get married and where?
We got married in Rugby, England in October, on Halloween actually, of 1992.
No kidding. And when did you come back to, was the plan to come back here?
At the time of the marriage, it was sort of a toss-up. There was a possibility I might end up actually working for Timberland in England.
Yeah.
But that didn't pan out. And I got back. I wasn't with Timberland any longer. That's actually when I made the transition and moved to Eustis.
Wow.
So I brought Karen over.
To Eustis. You brought Karen to Eustis.
Yeah.
How'd she like that?
From the English Midlands. It was a bit of a culture shock, particularly considering she came over here. It took 4 months to get her visa sorted out.
Yeah.
And so I took her up to Eustis in the end of February.
Oh, man. The only way that could have been worse is if you'd done it like early December. You know, but anyway.
It was, there was more snow on the ground than she had seen in her life up to
my
that
goodness.
point.
Yeah, geez. And so,
But she stayed with me, so.
surprising, but you know, they
Yeah.
do that. I don't know why. I feel the same way about Pam. Marcus is older than Kathleen.
Yes.
And so I should be able to do this in my head, but I can't. Is he born in Portland?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've come down here and...
Yeah, we moved back. In '97, we decided it was time to get out of Eustis. We were getting a little bit stir crazy up there.
Yeah.
And time return to civilization was in order.
Yeah.
So we moved down, lived in Gorham for a bit, and then moved here into Portland, literally across the street from Trinity.
Yeah. And so Marcus was born in 98. Were you always
No,
church?
2000.
2000.
He was a millennium baby.
Easy to remember. That's what you said.
Yeah.
Now, were you going to church in the 90s?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So kids brought you to church?
I was cradle Episcopalian.
Yeah.
Grew away from it when, after I graduated from university and life sort of
Started
intervened.
drinking beer. That was my story. I'm not putting words in your mouth. But yeah, 20s is a tough time for a single guy to go to church.
Yeah.
Yeah, but keep going.
So, but it was partly kids, and Trinity, there was definitely the convenience factor.
Yeah.
But the thing and Karen started coming over here before I did.
Yeah.
We got the kids baptized here.
Yeah. Who's the Rev? Betty?
David for the first one.
David Holroyd.
Yeah, David as the interim for
Marcus
Marcus.
Christ's own forever. I liked David very much.
Yeah, and then Kathleen was after Larry had come, and
Right.
so I was sort of intermittent at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I became regular in 2005 after my cancer diagnosis.
Yeah. Well, we saw that with Damar Hamlin the other day. Everybody, all these sacrilegious guys out on the field, down on both knees, praying their hearts out. And so, how much of I can't come up with the right word for that, but a crossroads in your life was that diagnosis?
It mostly, the nature of my particular disease is that it's a chronic condition. As long as I treat it and stay one treatment ahead of the disease, there's nothing to prevent a normal sort of lifespan. But at the same time, I'm cognizant of it, and it gives me an appreciation for every day.
Is it a...
But cancer diagnosis it's a lonely place, in that even as widespread as cancer is in society, people don't like to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do is that it's different from other things. It's not something that is invading you, it's your body turning on itself. Mm-hmm. And that is a very frightening sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And people don't like to talk about that against the possibility that it might happen to them.
It's contagious, maybe. Yeah.
And so a diagnosis, it's a lonely sort of place, and that's what got me sort of actively back here at Trinity, was to come to terms with that situation.
Yeah. Who was your first friend at Trinity? Was anybody nice to you when you came up?
Oh, everybody was nice.
Yeah.
It didn't take long before I ended up getting roped into ushering by Skip and Sarah.
Ah, okay.
So
Yeah.
I think Skip is probably the first person to I got close to.
You guys have been, you and Karen and the children have been very involved in Trinity. I know you've ushered. I know you've been on the vestry. I know you've been treasurer for a long time, and that's hundreds of hours a year. What else have you done here at Trinity? Speaking for the kids, how do they like having been churched?
Well, Kathleen's moved into an agnostic phase in her life.
Sure, she's at college, right?
And I think Marcus, to a certain extent as well, although perhaps less overtly so.
Yeah. Do you feel that...
on the other hand, I think that it was a very good experience for
right,
them
the kids,
to do
the
it.
green kids aren't sitting in the first row on Sunday. I don't know if you've noticed that or not. They're around once in a while. Emily, more active than Sam. But I think they both think having been churched helps them a bunch of ways. You know, it grounds you spiritually. It gives you a sense of right and wrong. There are certain rules that I think you follow in life, whether you're going to church every Sunday. There are things about art and literature. And then there's a sense of spirituality and prayerfulness within that I think evolves when you're sitting here in these pews, listen to Peter drag on and on and on. But is that your feeling about your kids?
I think, I think that it was overall a good experience for them, particularly the socialization involved with being in the church school, and the youth programs, because they were both active in tech and the various diocesan youth programs.
Yeah. Where's Marcus now? What's he up to?
Marcus is at home. He's completed a 2-year business degree at SMCC last spring.
Oh, nice.
He was looking to switch to 4-year computer degree through USM, but things didn't really work that well in the fall. But he is working toward doing online certification with web development.
Great. And Kathleen?
Kathleen is at your alma mater now.
Yeah.
She went up there a year ago. And
is this her freshman year? Her first year?
No.
She's a second year, or what do they call them?
Yeah, she's
a sophomore.
She's halfway through her sophomore year.
Oh my goodness! So she's picking a major now.
She went in with an intent to do a double major in environmental science and political science, but she's concentrating on the environmental science with minors in international affairs and economics.
Nobody cares what I think, so I just tell them. A lot of people say, I had a double major, and I think, well, so you concentrated 60 hours, have half your work on these two subjects, where in some ways college is about a more broadening experience. So sometimes when I hear somebody's a double major, I think you miss the point sometimes. So I'm glad Kathleen dropped one of those majors and picked up a few minors and, heading, widening her base, but what do I know?
Well, she was fortunate in that she was able to do a lot of dual enrollment stuff when she was at Portland High School.
Yeah.
So she actually went into Orono with 30 hours accumulated.
Oh, isn't that great?
So she's
a year from commencement, just about.
Yeah. So she ends up in a place where, in particular, with the international affairs, she has all of her language requirements taken care of. She did a month in Toulouse with CIEE.
Oh, no kidding.
So
Good for her.
so she's got a lot of a language and culture, and so that additional, the concentration point you're going to, she's already taken care of that on the side.
Good for her. Good for her. No, nice kids, and they added a lot to Trinity as they're growing up here. So tell me about being treasurer of Trinity Episcopal Church. We got any money? And I don't know, what kind of a perspective of the church does that role give you? And I don't even know what I mean, but you must know all kinds of stuff about Trinity through the financial track that we leave.
It's an interesting perspective. I've been involved for a lot of time on the finance side simply as a counter.
Yeah, I was a counter for a while.
And so that gave me an understanding in terms of what money is coming in and where it comes from. The full treasurer's perspective of where the money comes from and then where it goes to is broadening. So one of the things, and this might be a little bit unusual, is it allows me to see the whole church, a picture of the whole church.
Yeah.
Including areas that are not strictly financial, in terms of how finance supports outreach, how it supports fellowship, and all of the other more spiritual sides of the business, as it were.
Interesting, isn't it, when you say it that way?
And so I tend to take, in an odd sort of way, a more holistic view of the church now.
That's interesting. What do you think we ought to change around here? I think we got to change this place. Let's change the Lord's Prayer. I'm kidding, but any thoughts? What do you like, and I'll go positive. What do you like about Trinity?
The people
Yep.
and the feeling of the place.
Yep.
It's warm, it's friendly. It's religious without being pushy.
Nice. Yeah. Anything you'd change?
I wouldn't say change, but I see things in terms of things that we're doing that we could perhaps do better if maybe we sort of tried to, this is the holistic thing. I've worked for a variety of companies over time. I much prefer working for smaller companies where you're not just a cog in the machine, but you can look at the whole entity and see how to develop the business from multiple different angles. And so what I would like to see is, if at all possible, sort of more of an integration of the different things that we do to build up the whole.
Okay. Give me an example.
Well, and obviously everything now is defined pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I thought was great pre-COVID was the concert series. Because it was something that was a wonderful thing for the congregation to be able to have the concerts here in this space, which is acoustically great. But it also was an outreach into the community, in that people who would come through the doors who would not normally ever come into this space turned up to see the performances.
Yep.
And so if that could be regenerated in some form, it's something that allows us to perhaps build our congregation, or reinforce the congregation who are here, or at the very least reach into the community and say, hey, Trinity's here and they're good people and they do good things and fun things.
You're talking my language. I got some talent lined up, but I'm not getting any takers here. So that is something we could bring back. So that would be fun. Well, Bill, how important has Trinity been to your life? And then I'll let you go.
over the last 20 years, it's been a major part of my life and very important, both in terms of my spiritual well-being and dealing with my condition, but just in terms of having fun and being social.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, you certainly bring a lot to this church. Your work, on the vestry, your work as the treasurer, just is essential for Trinity. Okay. And I think on behalf of the congregation, although I'm just a parishioner, I can say, thank you very much from the bottom of our heart. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. And you are an interesting and exciting Episcopalian, and I appreciate you all joining us here on this world-class program. I mean, it's just, the ratings going through the roof. And we'll see you next week with another adventure with an exciting Episcopalian.